The city breathes in neon and exhaust. It is 3 in the morning. Arthur Vance navigates the slick, rain-washed streets. His third shift of the day is nearly over. Arthur pulls up to a discreet downtown building. The request came in just minutes ago. He watches the entrance, his features illuminated by the harsh dashboard light. A young woman stumbles out. This is Victoria. Blonde, elegantly dressed, but heavily disoriented. She leans against the damp brick wall, her gaze unfocused and lost in the night. Arthur steps out, opening the rear door. He offers no judgment, only a quiet, steady presence. She collapses into the back seat, barely whispering a faint destination. As Arthur merges back into traffic, his eyes dart to the rearview mirror. 2 dark sedans pull out from the alleyway, matching his pace with unnerving precision. He tightens his grip on the steering wheel. The silent financial burden he carries doesn't afford him the luxury of trouble, but his sharp survival instincts immediately take over. A sharp turn down a narrow industrial corridor. Arthur cuts the headlights, expertly sliding the vehicle behind a long row of rusted shipping containers. The pursuing sedans speed past the intersection, their taillights fading into the heavy fog. Arthur waits in the absolute silence, his breathing slow, calculated, and perfectly measured. In the back seat, Victoria remains completely oblivious, lost in a dense haze. Arthur restarts the engine, pulling quietly back onto the main coastal road. The towering iron gates of the Sterling estate loom ahead. Arthur stops the car, entirely unaware of the massive corporate empire that resides within those walls. Arthur steps out into the damp coastal air, pressing the intercom button. He expects nothing but the end of a long, exhausting shift. The massive iron gates part smoothly. He drives the vehicle up a manicured stone driveway, pulling to a halt before the imposing entrance. Moving with quiet efficiency, Arthur opens the passenger door. He helps Victoria steady her footing, her expensive heels clicking unevenly on the polished stone. Before they reach the steps, the heavy oak door swings wide. A formidable presence steps into the framing light of the grand foyer. This is Eleanor Sterling. Impeccably dressed, sharp-featured, radiating absolute authority. She processes the scene before her with calculating, emotionless precision. Her icy gaze shifts from her unsteady daughter to the exhausted driver. It is an intense, unspoken interrogation, searching for ulterior motives. Arthur meets her stare without flinching. He offers a brief, factual explanation of the night's events, asking for nothing in return. Eleanor gives a single, slow nod. A brief expression of gratitude leaves her lips, sharp, formal, and entirely devoid of warmth. He turns his back on the sprawling wealth, walking down the stone steps. There is no lingering, no expectation, just a man eager to leave. As his taillights disappear down the driveway, Eleanor remains standing in the threshold. A subtle, unreadable calculation begins to form in her mind. Daylight strikes the towering glass facade of Sterling Logistics. It is a new day, but for the corporate machine, it is merely the continuation of relentless operational gears turning. Arthur sits at his desk. Dressed in standard corporate attire, nursing a cheap coffee. He displays no visible fatigue, burying the grueling night beneath a mask of professional stoicism. A few desks away, Julian and Marcus observe the floor. They are ambitious, calculating men, constantly scanning the environment for vulnerabilities to exploit and leverage to acquire. A sudden, palpable silence descends upon the operations floor. Keyboards stop clicking. Conversations die instantly. A commanding presence has breached the perimeter of the open plan office. Eleanor Sterling moves through the aisle. Flanked by senior executives, she requires no introduction. She walks with the devastating certainty of someone who owns the ground beneath her. She takes her position at the head of the main conference table. The official announcement is a mere formality. She has taken absolute control of the corporate empire. Her cold, analytical gaze sweeps across the assembled mid-level managers. She evaluates them not as human beings, but as operational assets and potential liabilities. Her eyes momentarily lock onto a familiar face in the crowd. It is Arthur. The exhausted driver from 3 in the morning is sitting right here in her operations division. Arthur registers her gaze. He does not flinch, smile, or acknowledge the connection. He simply looks back at his monitor, maintaining a perfect, impenetrable boundary of professionalism. Julian and Marcus intercept this brief, silent exchange. A spark of professional paranoia ignites between them. In the corporate hierarchy, an unexplained connection to the top is a direct threat. The mid-morning sun filters through the heavy silk curtains of Victoria's bedroom. She stirs from an unsteady rest, her head heavy with fragments of the previous night. Victoria sits up slowly, her long blonde hair falling over her shoulders. The opulence of the room offers no comfort against the deep disorientation that consumes her mind. She reaches for her phone on the marble nightstand. The screen blinks to life, casting a cold blue glow on her pale, handsome features. Group chat messages from the night before appear. The tone of her inner circle is not one of concern, but of calculated dismissal and mockery. She scrolls through a thread initiated by Julian's close associates. The realization hardens in her chest: her vulnerability last night was a coordinated, deliberate trap. They had abandoned her outside the downtown venue on purpose, leaving her exposed to a brewing scandal designed to compromise her family name. Victoria stares at the ceiling, processing the betrayal. The sophisticated social circle she trusted was merely a den of corporate manipulation and deceit. Yet, a singular, unexplained detail remains in her memory: a steady pair of hands on a steering wheel and a calm voice that asked for nothing. She opens her ride-share history. The profile is minimalist, showing only a name, Arthur. There is no contact detail left behind, only a completed route. Victoria grips the phone with quiet determination. In a world full of predators, she needs to find the one anonymous person who chose to protect her. Arthur leaves the neon glow of the city center behind. He descends into a grittier district where the shadows are deeper and the air feels heavier with the scent of rain. He enters a modest, sparsely furnished apartment. It is a space designed for survival, not comfort, reflecting the unrelenting weight of the family obligations he carries alone. On a small wooden table, a stack of envelopes awaits. These are the medical tolls for his father's fragile state, a debt that tethers Arthur to his exhausting triple-shift life. He moves a heavy bookshelf, revealing a concealed floor safe. His movements are practiced and silent, the actions of a man who has lived with secrets for a long time. The safe clicks open. Inside lies a weathered leather folder, its surface scarred by time. It is the only remaining archive of a stolen legacy. Arthur pulls out a formal contract dated 20 years ago. The header reads, Sterling and Vance Logistics, Founders Agreement. The name Vance is printed in bold, faded ink. A photograph falls out. It shows a younger, robust Caucasian man, Arthur's father, standing alongside a youthful Eleanor Sterling and her late husband in front of their first warehouse. Arthur's thumb traces his father's face. The betrayal that dismantled the Vance name was calculated and absolute, leaving them with nothing but liabilities and broken health. He closes the folder, his jaw tightening. The corporate machine he serves by day is the same monster that devoured his family's future and honor years ago. Arthur stares at his reflection in a cracked mirror. The time for silent endurance is nearing its end. The son of the founder is no longer just a ghost in the machine. The high noon sun glares against the glass tower. Inside, the corporate ecosystem functions on a ruthless hierarchy, where survival often depends on the quiet elimination of perceived threats. Arthur finalizes a critical logistics analysis. It is a flawless operational projection, the kind of meticulous work that has kept the department afloat despite severe resource limitations. He steps away from his workstation for a brief consultation. In the predatory environment of the operations floor, an unattended desk is an open invitation. Julian and Marcus move with practiced casualness. They approach Arthur's cubicle, their demeanor perfectly masking the calculated professional friction they are about to execute. Julian accesses the physical summary folder. With swift precision, he replaces Arthur's accurate projections with a subtly flawed data set, ensuring a massive miscalculation. Marcus stands watch, his features set in a mask of indifferent conversation. He scans the room, securing the perimeter for this quiet bureaucratic maneuver. The manipulated document is neatly realigned on the desk. To the untrained eye, nothing has changed. But the trap, disguised as a clerical error, is now fully armed. Arthur returns to his seat, his mind occupied by the sheer volume of his duties. He picks up the folder, entirely unaware of the invisible flaw it now contains. He walks down the main aisle and places the folder into the executive review tray. This submission is standard protocol, yet it is meant to be his professional downfall. From across the floor, Julian and Marcus observe the drop-off. A brief, satisfied glance passes between them. The slow, methodical erasure of Arthur Vance has officially begun. The elite circles of the city operate on a currency of information. Victoria Sterling understands that in her world, anonymity is a luxury that few can truly maintain for long. She stands on her private balcony, the cold morning wind whipping through her blonde hair. The betrayal by her peers has sharpened her focus, turning her curiosity into a mission. Victoria initiates contact with a discreet information broker. She provides the only fragment she possesses, the name Arthur and the timestamp of a completed midnight route through the city. Digital algorithms begin to sift through the vast, interconnected databases of the metropolitan area. The search is quiet, efficient, and hidden behind layers of high-end encryption and privilege. A notification pings on her encrypted device. A digital dossier assembles itself, pulling data from rideshare logs, social security archives, and professional registries within the Sterling corporate network. The screen illuminates her face as a corporate ID photo appears. It is him. Arthur Vance. A mid-level logistics manager currently employed within the very Thapkin her family owns. The irony is not lost on her. The man who saved her from a public scandal is a ghost in her mother's machine, a hidden variable in their vast empire. Victoria arrives at Sterling Logistics, avoiding the main executive entrance. She moves through the service corridors, a shadow in a world designed for transparency and absolute corporate oversight. From behind a tinted glass partition, she observes him. Arthur is back at his desk, his handsome features set in the same stoic mask she remembers from the night before. She watches as he processes documents, unaware of the flawed trap Julian had set. Victoria realizes that Arthur Vance is much more than a mere employee or a driver. Later that afternoon, a routine performance meeting is called. Arthur enters the room, expecting standard operational feedback on his completed assignment. A digital projection displays the contents of the folder he submitted earlier. The logistics numbers are magnified on the glowing glass screen. Arthur's sharp eyes scan the projected data. Within seconds, a glaring inconsistency catches his attention, a flaw that was never in his original draft. The projections are fundamentally corrupted. It is a catastrophic miscalculation designed to completely dismantle his professional credibility in front of the department. He does not react with outrage or shock. His handsome features remain entirely impassive as he processes the reality of this deliberate manipulation. Across the table, Julian and Marcus watch him like hawks. They are waiting for a breakdown, anticipating the collapse of his stoic facade. Arthur merely gives a slow, steady nod, quietly requesting a copy of the digital file for further review. He grants his enemies no satisfaction. Walking back to his desk, Arthur reconstructs the timeline. The brief absence, the unattended desk, the invisible snare is now fully visible to him. He sits down and opens a secure, hidden directory on his local drive. It contains the raw, time-stamped backups of his true, flawless analysis. Arthur Vance is a man who has fought much harder battles in the dark. He quietly begins assembling the undeniable proof of his competence. The shifting dynamics of the corporate office cannot stay confined to the glass tower. Outside, a different kind of intersection is quietly being arranged. Arthur sits in his car, a notification from an unverified source flashing on his dashboard. The message is sparse, requesting a discreet meet at an old downtown cafe. He evaluates the risk. In his current high-stakes professional environment, every unexpected variable is a potential threat, yet his survival instincts urge him to proceed. Arthur pulls up to the designated location, a secluded, dimly lit European-style cafe tucked away from the main commercial avenues. He steps inside, the brass bell above the door chiming softly. The interior is quiet, wrapped in deep shadows and the bitter aroma of dark roasted coffee. In a corner booth, bathed in the soft glow of a stained glass lamp, sits Victoria. She has removed her sunglasses, her blonde hair catching the warm light. She watches him approach. Arthur moves with the same calm, unhurried precision she observed behind the glass partition earlier that day. He slides into the opposite seat without a word. His handsome face remains an unreadable mask, evaluating the woman who was a disoriented passenger just hours ago. Victoria is the first to break the heavy silence. Her tone is measured, devoid of the entitlement typical of her elite social circle. The initial contact is established. Between the son of the ruined founder and the daughter of the current empire, an unspoken alliance begins to take root. Victoria leans forward, her voice a low, steady murmur that barely carries beyond their table. She begins to dismantle the illusion of the previous night's events. She confirms what Arthur already suspected. The disorienting state she was in was not a personal lapse, but a calculated manipulation by Julian's associates. Arthur listens in absolute silence. His handsome features are cast in sharp relief by the amber lamp, his eyes reflecting a cold, clinical understanding of the betrayal. Victoria explains the motive. Julian is not just a competitor, he is a predator seeking to destabilize her mother's leadership by creating a public family scandal. She shifts the focus to the present. Victoria warns him about the operational trap at the office, revealing that Julian sees Arthur as a significant professional threat. A faint, grim smile touches Arthur's lips. He acknowledges her warning but reveals nothing of the counter-defense he has already begun to assemble in the shadows. Victoria's gaze is searching, looking for a sign of fear or hesitation. She finds only the same impenetrable stoicism that first drew her to him on that dark road. The conversation reaches a point of high-stakes clarity. They are no longer just a driver and a passenger, they are two individuals caught in a shared corporate crossfire. Victoria slides a small, encrypted memory drive across the table. It contains the internal communications she intercepted between Julian and his conspirators. Arthur takes the drive, his fingers grazing hers for a brief, electric second. The meeting concludes, leaving the cold night air charged with the scent of an impending storm. The impending storm breaks over the city as Arthur returns to his apartment. The heavy rain mirrors the turbulent corporate warfare waiting ahead. He connects the encrypted drive to his modest but powerful home server. The digital interface casts a sharp blue glow across his exhausted but focused features. Bypassing the security protocols requires precision. Arthur navigates the complex encryption with the quiet expertise of a man used to operating unseen. The intercepted communications unfold on the screen. Julian's arrogance is meticulously documented in the form of raw, unedited corporate messaging. Arthur cross-references the dates. The timeline of Victoria's manipulated incident aligns perfectly with the bureaucratic maneuver executed against his own logistics report. Every piece of data forms a flawless, undeniable trail. Julian and Marcus left digital footprints, underestimating the capabilities of the man they sought to erase. He integrates Victoria's findings with his own time-stamped backups. The fragmented pieces of defense are now forged into a singular, undeniable digital asset. A multi-layered security lock is applied to the compiled archive. The countermeasure is fully armed, safely stored behind cryptographic walls. Dawn begins to bleed through the rain-streaked window. The long night of preparation yields to the cold, rational light of morning. Arthur fastens his tie, adjusting his collar in the cracked mirror. He steps out not as a target, but as a silent architect of consequence. The massive oak doors of the executive boardroom close. Inside, the elite directors gather under cold, calculated lighting, ready to evaluate the new empire's stability. Eleanor Sterling sits at the head of the long table. Her composure is absolute, though the atmosphere is thick with brewing corporate tension. Julian stands before the main projection screen. He wears a tailored suit and a mask of false concern, expertly presenting the quarterly logistics review. The corrupted data is displayed for the entire board. A collective murmur of disapproval ripples through the wealthy, seasoned Caucasian executives. Julian smoothly attributes the catastrophic projections directly to Arthur's department, framing it as a critical failure of oversight and operational management. An older board member leans forward, challenging Eleanor's recent restructuring choices. The pressure mounts rapidly to remove the supposedly incompetent manager immediately. Marcus sits among the observers, maintaining a passive expression while quietly relishing the undeniable success of their bureaucratic maneuver. Eleanor's icy gaze remains unbroken. She does not defend Arthur immediately, silently analyzing the aggressive, coordinated maneuvering of her ambitious subordinates. Julian presses his advantage, officially recommending Arthur's termination to preserve the company's market stability and reassure the anxious shareholders. Just as the board prepares to formally endorse the decision, the heavy boardroom doors swing open. Arthur steps into the threshold, uninvited but radiating absolute authority. Arthur Vance stands in the doorway. He carries no files, only a single encrypted drive. The heavy silence of the boardroom surrounds him. Eleanor Sterling watches his approach. Her icy demeanor does not falter, observing the precise execution of a countermeasure she had not anticipated. Julian immediately attempts to regain control. He demands security remove the unauthorized personnel, projecting a sudden, frantic authority. Arthur does not break stride. He bypasses the seated executives, connecting his drive directly into the master projection console. The digital interface overrides the ongoing presentation. Julian's carefully constructed narrative of failure is instantly erased from the massive glass screen. Arthur's original, flawless logistics projection floods the display. The system clearly highlights the secured timestamps, verifying the absolute accuracy of his work. The screen splits, revealing the intercepted internal communications. The raw text outlines the exact methodology of the bureaucratic maneuver executed by Julian and Marcus. The seasoned board members analyze the data. The undeniable digital footprint of internal sabotage is laid bare before the highest authority of the empire. In the observer's row, Marcus shrinks into the shadows. The realization of his impending professional collapse paralyzes him completely. Julian's confident facade shatters, replaced by a pale, visible panic. Arthur stands perfectly still, a silent architect witnessing the destruction he engineered. The boardroom remains entirely silent as the digital evidence burns brightly on the screen. Eleanor Sterling rises from her seat at the head of the table. She does not raise her voice. She addresses Julian directly, her tone dropping the temperature of the room to an absolute, uncompromising zero. Eleanor dictates the immediate termination of Julian's network access and administrative privileges. The corporate dismissal is clinical, devastating, and absolute. Julian attempts to mount a final, desperate defense, stammering through hollow excuses. The seasoned board members simply turn their faces away in collective disgust. Eleanor gestures to the corporate security detail waiting in the wings. Two imposing officers step forward to escort the disgraced executives from the premises. Marcus is pulled from his seat in the observer's row, his head bowed in complete professional defeat as he is marched toward the exit. Julian is stripped of his corporate credentials on the spot. His once impeccable navy suit now looks like the uniform of a deeply broken man. Arthur watches the removal without a hint of vindictive triumph. The systemic debt is settled, but he finds no primitive joy in the destruction. Eleanor turns her piercing gaze back to Arthur. An unspoken acknowledgement of his flawless, ruthless efficiency passes silently between the two of them. Arthur calmly unplugs his encrypted drive from the master console. He turns and exits the boardroom just as quietly as he entered, leaving the elite in awe. The corporate echoes of the dismissal still linger in the hallways. Arthur Vance walks toward the executive elevator, his presence now a focal point of intense whispers. A private assistant, impeccably dressed and Caucasian, intercepts him. The message is clear and direct. The CEO requests an immediate audience in her private inner sanctum. Arthur enters the top-floor office. The space is vast, dominated by floor-to-ceiling glass and the cold, gray skyline of a city built on ambition and ruthless strategy. Eleanor Sterling stands by the window. She has discarded her formal blazer, appearing less like a corporate monarch and more like a woman burdened by the shadows of history. On her desk lies the weathered photograph from 20 years ago. The founders of Sterling and Vance look out from the past, witnesses to a long-suppressed systemic injustice. Eleanor acknowledges the name Vance with a voice that carries the weight of a heavy conscience. She admits she recognized his eyes the moment they met at the gates. Arthur remains stationary. He does not seek an apology or a hollow expression of regret. He seeks the absolute restoration of the legacy that was methodically stripped away. The negotiation is clinical and devoid of sentiment. Eleanor reveals the board's growing hostility toward her leadership, highlighting her own need for a powerful, untainted ally. Arthur presents his terms. He does not demand the removal of the Sterling name, but rather a total restructuring of the ownership to honor the original founders' agreement. Eleanor looks at the city lights, the decision hanging in the balance. A new pact is forming between the rightful heir and the protector of the current empire. The digital monitors across the Sterling logistics lobby update simultaneously. The announcement is a surgical strike to the old corporate order. Arthur Vance is officially designated as the new executive director. The name once erased from the company's history now stands at the apex of its operational hierarchy. Arthur moves through the executive wing, his stride carrying a new, heavier gravity. He is no longer the ghost in the machine, but its primary architect. He occupies a new office, a glass-walled sanctuary that commands a panoramic view of the harbor. His first act is to purge the digital remnants of Julian's influence. A series of strategic dismissals follows. Arthur reviews personnel files with clinical detachment, identifying every manager who prioritized personal loyalty over operational integrity. Victoria Sterling watches the transition from the periphery. She sees a man who has seamlessly adapted to the cold, rarefied air of the top floor. She enters his office, bringing a formal congratulation that feels secondary to the intense, unspoken curiosity that now defines their relationship. Arthur acknowledges her with a brief nod. The professional boundary remains intact, even as the shared secrets of their first meeting linger in the quiet office air. Eleanor Sterling observes the duo from her private surveillance feed. She recognizes the formation of a power dynamic that could either save or consume the Sterling legacy. Arthur places his father's old photograph in a silver frame on the mahogany desk. The past has finally secured a seat at the table of the future. The fall from corporate grace rarely leads to immediate surrender. Outside the glass tower, the shadows of the city offer new avenues for industrial friction. Julian sits in a secluded corner of an exclusive private club. Disheveled but consumed by a dark, vengeful calculation, he nurses a drink in the dim amber light. An older, powerful Caucasian man steps into the framing. This is Thomas Sterling's former rival, an aggressive asset manager looking for a vulnerability to exploit. Julian opens a sleek leather briefcase on the velvet table. He possesses encrypted internal records, a final, parting theft from his sudden corporate eviction. He lays out the documentation detailing the secret alliance between Eleanor and the newly appointed executive director, Arthur Vance. The adversary analyzes the files with a predatory grin. The revelation of the Vance bloodline holding significant equity is the precise catalyst they needed. They begin outlining a hostile takeover, a calculated financial assault designed to systematically squeeze the sterling logistics market value. Julian offers his services as an inside informant, his professional ruin turning him into a desperate weapon against the empire that cast him out. The alliance in the dark is finalized with a silent glass toast. The threat to Arthur's newly reclaimed legacy is no longer domestic, but global. Outside, the city skyline blinks with cold, digital lights. The storm that Arthur thought he had mastered is merely shifting to a new, larger front. The digital pulse of the global market begins its relentless rhythmic beat. High-frequency data streams across multiple monitors, signaling a shift in the corporate landscape. Arthur Vance monitors the live stock ticker. His handsome features are illuminated by the flickering green and red lights of the fluctuating sterling logistics valuation. A sudden, coordinated sell-off triggers an automated volatility alert. Arthur observes a massive downward trajectory, a calculated attempt to destabilize the company's primary market standing. He initiates a secure internal channel to the CEO's office. There is no urgency in his tone, only a clinical reporting of the industrial friction unfolding. Eleanor Sterling enters the high-security command center. She is draped in the cold, strategic aura of a wartime monarch, ready to defend her family's remaining sovereignty. They analyze the buyer origins. The digital footprints lead to offshore shell companies, confirming the involvement of an aggressive, external adversary with deep pockets. The realization hardens. Julian has compromised the Vance equity restructuring details, providing the adversary with a precise roadmap to exploit their current transition. Arthur outlines the defensive counter-strategy. To preserve the legacy, they must execute a massive share buyback, a maneuver that requires absolute financial transparency and trust. His hands move with surgical precision over the encrypted keyboard. Arthur Vance is no longer just protecting a job, he is fortifying the walls of his birthright. The tension in the command center is palpable. As the market opening bell nears, the heir and the matriarch stand united against the coming financial storm. The digital opening bell rings. It is not a physical sound in the war room, but a cold, rhythmic ignition of high-frequency industrial friction. Thomas sits in his glass-walled penthouse, miles away. He monitors the sterling stock price plummeting with the clinical satisfaction of a seasoned predator. Beside him, Julian coordinates the narrative. He disseminates calculated rumors through high-end financial channels, amplifying the perceived instability of the new leadership. In the war room, the downward trajectory is aggressive. Eleanor coordinates with global banking partners, her voice a cold instrument of strategic defiance. Arthur executes the first phase of the counter-buyback. He absorbs the massive sell orders with an unrelenting rhythm, steadying the foundation against the assault. Away from the digital battlefield, Victoria moves through the dim corridors of the administrative wing. She is a ghost navigating her own family's machine. She reaches Julian's former workstation. The space is hollow and stripped, yet Victoria's intuition leads her to the physical gaps in the archival storage. She discovers a concealed physical ledger hidden behind a false panel. It is an archaic safeguard used for documenting illicit off-book professional incentives. The entries detail secret payments from Thomas's offshore entities. It is the definitive evidence required to dismantle the hostile takeover through legal channels. A security patrol light sweeps the hallway. Victoria secures the ledger beneath her coat and vanishes into the service stairwell, carrying the ultimate leverage. The tension in the war room reaches its boiling point. The capital required to sustain the buyback is depleting rapidly under Thomas's relentless financial coercion. A secure file transmission interrupts the chaotic market feeds on Arthur's console. The source is encrypted, but the data payload is instantly recognizable. High-resolution scans of the hidden ledger unfold across the main screen. The documented illicit professional incentives establish an undeniable connection between Julian and Thomas. Arthur registers the victory with a slow, tightening grip on the glass desk. The physical evidence found by Victoria has transformed their defensive retreat into an offensive legal strike. Eleanor steps toward the console, her icy eyes absorbing the damning rows of offshore transaction numbers. The strategy changes from market resistance to regulatory intervention. She authorizes the immediate dispatch of the encrypted files to the federal regulatory authorities and the exchange's Oversight Compliance Division. Miles away in his penthouse, Thomas receives an automated compliance flag. The predatory smirk fades from his features as his trading access is abruptly frozen. The main display in the war room shows the sudden halt of the aggressive sell orders. The hostile takeover mechanism has been legally and systematically paralyzed. A heavy, lingering silence returns to the room. Arthur leans back in his chair, his handsome face carved in the pale glow of a stabilized market chart. The first major threat from the outside has been neutralized. The son of the founder has anchored the empire, securing a definitive victory alongside the matriarch. The transition from market warfare to direct psychological confrontation begins. High above the city, a neutral glass sanctuary serves as the arena for 2 generations of ambition. Arthur Vance steps out of the elevator. He moves with the devastating calm of a man who already holds the superior tactical position. Thomas stands by a minimalist glass desk. The cold light of the high-altitude office sharpens the predatory lines of his aged, handsome features. There is no professional greeting. Thomas immediately introduces a significant financial incentive, sliding a black leather folder across the transparent surface. Inside lies a check with a numerical value designed to dismantle any ordinary man's professional integrity and personal loyalty. Thomas outlines the proposal. He offers Arthur the CEO position under his new regime, requesting only the internal encryption keys to the sterling assets. Arthur looks at the check, then at the man who once profited from his father's systematic ruin. His handsome features remain an impenetrable mask. He does not respond with anger. He speaks with a low, clinical resonance, detailing the exact nature of the legacy Thomas is attempting to buy. Arthur's hand moves across the desk, slowly pushing the folder back toward the adversary. The rejection is quiet, physical, and absolute. Thomas's composure begins to fray. For the first time, he realizes that the son of Vance is not seeking wealth, but a total restoration of honor. Arthur steps out of the neutral office tower, his dark gray suit sharp against the cold afternoon wind. He taps his encrypted device, confirming the failure of Thomas's financial incentive. Inside the Sterling Logistics Command Center, Eleanor receives the signal. The time for calculated patience has expired, the counteroffensive is immediately authorized. The compiled digital archive is transmitted simultaneously to major global financial news networks, breaking the boundaries of corporate confidentiality. Across international newsrooms, editorial banners refresh rapidly. The unverified rumors are instantly replaced by undeniable, time-stamped cryptographic proof. Television displays worldwide illuminate with breaking news alerts. The headlines expose a massive network of illicit professional incentives and market manipulation linked to Thomas's fund. The public exposure triggers an immediate panic on the trading floor. The asset valuation of Thomas's firm plunges into a terminal, unrecoverable trajectory. Legal enforcement vehicles arrive at the base of Thomas's luxury penthouse.
Clear on the left.
The flashing red and blue lights cut through the mounting corporate dust. Inside his empty office, Thomas watches the media coverage in absolute silence. His dynamic network of influence has vanished, replaced by an impending regulatory fallout. Back at the apex of the Sterling Tower, Arthur and Eleanor observe the unfolding resolution on the central monitors. The historic debt of the Vance family is finally being extracted. Victoria joins them at the glass wall, looking out over a redefined city skyline. The triad of authority is complete, unified, and absolute. The morning sun breaks through the lingering storm clouds, casting a triumphant golden glow over the massive glass tower. The era of fractured leadership has ended. Inside the grand lobby, a highly coordinated architectural transition is underway. The old corporate signage is systematically dismantled by a dedicated crew. Eleanor Sterling stands beside Arthur Vance. Her authorization of this historic restructuring represents the ultimate reconciliation of a decades-old systemic injustice. Heavy steel letters are hoisted onto the pristine marble wall. The installation moves with clinical precision, permanently altering the identity of the empire. Arthur steps forward, his hand tracing the cold, polished surface of the letter V. The heavy burden of his hidden lineage begins to lift. The new insignia is fully illuminated, Sterling and Vance Logistics. The foundational bloodline has been officially and undeniably restored to the apex. Victoria observes from a short distance. The profound respect forged in the crucible of corporate warfare solidifies an unbreakable bond between the two heirs. The remaining board members witness the unveiling. Their previous skepticism dissolves into absolute submission before the newly forged triad of power. Financial networks broadcast the rebranding. The market responds with overwhelming stability, validating the ruthless efficiency of the transition. Arthur returns to his glass-walled sanctuary. For the first time in years, the crushing weight of his father's ghost has been completely laid to rest. The dust of the corporate battlefield settles. Away from the glass towers, Arthur and Victoria meet in a quiet, secluded conservatory within the Sterling estate. The massive oak bookshelves and warm firelight create a sanctuary of absolute privacy. They are no longer soldiers in a boardroom, but two individuals seeking respite. Victoria pours 2 glasses of amber liquid. She moves with a natural grace, stripped of the defensive armor she wore during the hostile takeover. She hands a glass to Arthur. For the first time since the night on the rain-washed streets, their eyes meet without the burden of strategic calculation. Arthur accepts the drink. His handsome features soften. The cold, mechanical director fades, revealing the quiet weariness of a man who has finally stopped running. Victoria speaks softly, acknowledging the immense weight he carried alone. She recognizes the profound sacrifice required to restore his family's honor. Arthur listens, his guard lowering completely. He realizes that Victoria is the only person who truly understands the anatomy of his hidden struggles. He shares a fragment of his past, a quiet memory of his father before the ruin. Victoria absorbs the vulnerability, her expression filled with deep, empathetic resonance. The physical distance between them narrows. It is not a sudden collision, but a slow, gravitational pull between two equals who have survived the same storm. As the firelight flickers, a silent, profound understanding is cemented. The strategic alliance dissolves, seamlessly evolving into an unbreakable personal bond. The collapse of an adversary leaves a vacuum in the market. Arthur Vance does not wait for competitors to act, he initiates a rapid, strategic acquisition of Thomas's distressed assets. Inside the executive suite, the glowing monitors display the depreciated valuation of the rival firm. Arthur calculates the exact threshold for a reverse corporate absorption. Eleanor Sterling signs the capital transfer authorizations. She provides the immense financial backing necessary to swallow their former enemy's empire whole. Corporate brokers execute the massive buy orders on the trading floor. The remaining infrastructure of Thomas's firm is systematically purchased at a fraction of its original worth. The corporate signage on Thomas's former headquarters is unceremoniously dismantled. The physical erasure mirrors the digital and financial dismantling of his legacy. Julian stands on the cold, rain-swept street below, watching the dismantling. Stripped of his leverage and his allies, he is left entirely isolated in the corporate wasteland. Victoria enters Arthur's office holding the final acquisition contracts. The new triad operates with a synchronized, flawless efficiency that dominates the industry. Arthur Vance's pen glides across the thick parchment. With a single signature, the rival firm is officially dissolved and integrated into Sterling and Vance Logistics. The digital global map updates on the war room screen. The logistics network doubles in size, establishing an absolute monopoly over the metropolitan market. Arthur stands before the glass facade, looking down at the expanded empire. The son who started with nothing now commands the very architecture of the city. The rebranding of the empire is followed by a total recalibration of its internal soul. Every department is summoned to the grand corporate auditorium. The space is filled with hundreds of Caucasian professionals, their faces a mixture of lingering shock and intense anticipation for the new order. Arthur Vance walks onto the stage. He eschews the traditional podium, standing as a singular, imposing figure of absolute operational discipline. He introduces the Integrity Protocol, a multi-layered digital framework designed to ensure total transparency across every transaction and hierarchy level. The massive screens behind him ignite with complex data structures, demonstrating how the new machine will automatically flag any unauthorized professional incentives. Arthur's voice carries a low, resonant frequency. He makes it clear that loyalty is no longer measured by personal connections, but by systemic integrity and merit. A hush falls over the assembly. The managers who once thrived in the shadows of Julian's regime realize that their old tactics are now obsolete. Eleanor and Victoria watch from the executive balcony. They observe the birth of a corporate culture that is both ruthlessly efficient and ethically unyielding. New encrypted security credentials are distributed to the senior leadership. Each card represents a commitment to the revised constitution of Sterling and Vance. Arthur concludes the address with a piercing gaze that sweeps the room. The architect has finished the blueprint, the era of shadows is officially dead. The morning sun breaks into a quiet medical facility. Arthur Vance enters his father's room, setting aside the power suit to simply be a son. The elderly founder, frail but with sharp, intelligent eyes, looks at his son. Arthur gives a slow, reassuring nod. The family honor has been restored. A luxury medical transport vehicle waits at the entrance. The journey back to the center of power begins in absolute, secured privacy. At the Sterling and Vance Tower, Victoria personally coordinates the clearance of the main lobby, ensuring a dignified path for the returning patriarch. The vehicle stops at the VIP entrance. Arthur himself pushes his father's wheelchair across the threshold of the glass empire. The old man gazes up at the towering marble atrium. This space once belonged to him, before the clinical betrayal cast him into the shadows. His eyes settle on the polished steel insignia, Sterling and Vance Logistics. Tears of emotional vindication roll down his weathered face. Eleanor Sterling emerges from the executive lift. She stops at a respectful distance, offering a deep, silent bow to her former co-founder. Arthur brings his father into the Apex office. The room is flooded with light, overlooking the vast shipping lanes of the harbor. The founder places a trembling hand on the silver-framed family photograph. The legacy is finally whole, positioned for eternity. Night falls over the city, but the Sterling and Vance Tower remains a beacon of brilliant white light. A fleet of luxury black limousines aligns perfectly at the entrance. The red carpet is rolled out, a symbolic path for the global elite. The air is electric with the rhythmic firing of high-end paparazzi flashes. Inside the grand ballroom, the atmosphere is a masterclass in strategic consolidation. Crystal chandeliers cast a shimmering glow over a sea of black tie attire. The power triad appears at the top of the marble staircase. Arthur, Eleanor, and Victoria move in synchronized rhythm, radiating a new, absolute authority. Eleanor Sterling stands at the crystal podium. She announces the official formation of the Global Alliance, citing the resolution of past industrial friction as the birth of a new era. Arthur Vance takes the stage. His presence commands the room, detailing a future defined by systemic unity and an expansion that knows no geographic boundaries. The announcement is broadcasted across the planet. In New York, London, and Tokyo, the new Sterling and Vance insignia dominates the digital landscape. The audience, the most powerful Caucasian figures in the industry, responds with a slow, thunderous ovation, recognizing the shift in the global hierarchy. Crystal flutes are raised in a unified toast. The liquid gold inside the glasses reflects the absolute triumph of the heir and the matriarch. As the music swells, the three figures stand together at the apex. The foundation is solidified, the legacy is now eternal and untouchable. The morning after the sovereign gala brings a pristine clarity to the city. The glass tower stands not just as a corporate headquarters, but as a monument of endurance. Arthur and Victoria retreat to a sunlit architectural planning room. They pivot smoothly from defending an empire to expanding its global footprint. Their partnership operates on a frequency of absolute trust. The professional boundaries have dissolved into a profound, unified personal foundation. Meanwhile, the mechanisms of accountability grind forward. In a sterile government facility, Thomas faces the inescapable reality of regulatory enforcement. Federal auditors systematically dismantle his offshore network. The fortune built on decades of illicit maneuvers is legally liquidated in a matter of hours. In a desolate corner of the city, Julian packs his remaining belongings. The industry has permanently blacklisted him, enforcing a total professional exile. Back at the estate, Eleanor Sterling observes the young couple from the terrace. The matriarch recognizes that the dynasty is finally secure against internal and external decay. Arthur presents Victoria with a heavy, antique iron key. It grants access to the foundational archives of both families, a gesture of ultimate transparency. They walk through the private estate gardens. The distance that once defined their initial encounter has been entirely erased by shared sacrifice. Their hands meet, fingers intertwining without hesitation. The architects of the new era have laid a foundation that no corporate storm can ever shatter. Time moves forward. The Sterling and Vance global supply chain operates with flawless precision, a testament to the new era of absolute transparency. Massive automated hubs replace the old, vulnerable infrastructure. The corporate machine now runs on merit, erasing the shadows where corruption once thrived. Eleanor Sterling gracefully transitions into an advisory role. She observes the thriving empire from a distance, her historic debt finally settled in full. The elderly founder rests in peaceful comfort. The crushing weight of betrayal is a distant memory, replaced by the quiet dignity of a restored name. Inside the Apex boardroom, Arthur and Victoria preside over a new generation of executive leadership. They command the room with a unified, unshakable presence. The assembly of directors operates with unparalleled discipline. The toxic ambition of the past has been permanently replaced by a culture of mutual respect. Victoria demonstrates her formidable acumen, blending the elite heritage of her family with the ruthless efficiency required by the modern market. Arthur stands at the head of the table. The former late-night driver is now the ultimate architect of an empire, securing his father's vision. Outside, the towering glass skyscraper pierces the skyline, standing as a monumental beacon of resilience, justice, and uncompromising corporate integrity. The legacy is no longer just a memory, it is a living, breathing reality. The storm has passed, leaving behind a foundation built for eternity.